This is Windows 9. No, really, this is Windows 9. It's real. Can't you see? It says Windows 9 on the desktop. Okay, what this actually is Windows 9 Edition. This wonderful creation was made by Dilshad Sys, also known as FreewareSys. Who is FreewareSys? Nobody knows. There's a FreewareSys Facebook page which hasn't been active since 2021. There's a Dilshad Sys OS account on Facebook, which links you to the FreewareSys website, which just does nothing. And there's a YouTube channel which hasn't been active in years. The only thing I can find about FreewareSys at all is a crusty Windows page about all of their lovely creations. This is probably a video on its own for another time. At least according to this anyway, they haven't been active in a very long time, but there's no sources for that, so who knows. As shown here, Windows 9 is supposed to be a mashup of Windows 7 and Windows 8.1. It also includes a lot of crap. This has been around for a very long time now, as a matter of fact, just about 10 years now, and I've always wanted to cover it because it's a very fun bootleg, so that's what we're doing today. I don't know where this would have been distributed, maybe on Facebook, but I got this from the Internet Archive, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Now, instead of just installing this on my usual capture PC and being done with it, I decided to go ahead and be a bit different this time and install this on a real computer that's actually in need of an operating system. Meet the Dell Vostro 3550. It's a rather boring laptop from 2011 that I don't really know what else to do with. This thing's hard drive died forever ago, so this is a good opportunity to go ahead and put an OS on it, and it's not like I'm going to be using this computer anyway. It also shipped with Windows 7 brand new, so in theory this OS should be 100% compatible with this laptop. It's got okay hardware. It's a Core i5 2520M with 4 gigs of RAM. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot going for this computer. I don't know, maybe I'll make a video on it, but it has several problems. But it'll work for today's demo. I've also gone ahead and thrown in that 100 gig drive into this just so it has a hard drive that will actually work. It's been blanked out so we don't have to deal with any Vista recovery media. I'm going to be installing this off of USB, not because I want to, well I do, but also because the ISO for this is 5 gigabytes, which means it's actually too big to fit on a DVD. What's even better is that it doesn't show up in the BIOS. Great. As it turns out, plugging it into the other USB port works fine, so I guess that USB port just doesn't work. It's frankly on point for this computer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and boot Windows 9 Edition. Now at a glance, the setup for this is identical to Windows 7's. This OS was based off of Windows 7, not 8.1, just to keep in mind. The setup for this is very interesting. Number one, they've changed the window and made it completely transparent, except for the X in the corner. They've replaced the Windows logo, copyright date, and rather interestingly, the language by default is German. So here we can see Windows 9 Professional, modified April 16th, 2014, which means this disaster is celebrating its 10-year anniversary. Rather interestingly, they've replaced every string that normally says Windows and replaced it with Windows 9 Edition. So it says Windows 9 Edition Files, Features, Updates, and then for some reason, 9E. Please be patient. Dilshad Sys is installing Windows 9 Edition on your system. Oh, thank you. They've also replaced the checkmark thing for some reason. Not really sure why. Otherwise, that's about all I really have to add about the install process. Of course, this is going to take its sweet time, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on that. This is otherwise just a standard Windows 7 installer, so we'll go ahead and cut to the setup screen, of which we get this lovely display of Windows 9 Edition preparing our computer for first use. Windows 9 Edition is that a new word? Oh my god. Dilshad's Windows 9. Interestingly, all you have to do is type in your username and password, and that's it. That's the only thing it asks you for. It also appears they've put in Windows 8 UI elements into Windows 7. It almost looks like a Windows 8 beta build. Windows 9 Pro is almost done. Dilshad Sys is doing his last minute magic. Oh, this text is so hard to read. Why did they do the multicolored thing? Oh my god. You can't even see the welcome text either because of this stupid gradient. Well, whatever. I'll let it sit here and wait since the hard drive was still chugging. I sat here waiting, and waiting, and waiting, and nothing was happening. For a little while, the hard drive was still seeking, but it just wasn't getting anywhere. Task Manager didn't really report anything obvious. I let it sit there for a long time, eventually got up to go get lunch, came back and it still wasn't done. I kind of just didn't really know what to do at this point. Since it didn't seem like anything was happening, I just went ahead and powered down the computer and restarted it, and we did get to a logon screen, but then it got to this Welcome to Windows 9 Edition thing, and that was basically it. It just crashed from here. I did have a bit of an idea maybe of why this is, since I did install this in a virtual machine and it worked fine. I did use Ventoy to boot the ISO. I didn't really think about this at first, but given this is a weird install of Windows, maybe for some reason that would be different. So just to be safe, I remade the media on a completely separate SD card and tried it again. For good measure, I just wiped out the other install. Just forget about it, do it again. I won't spend a whole lot of time on this install since it's the exact same process as before. It was a pretty lengthy process, but it turned out that this was in fact the problem. It turns out it does need to access things off of the install media, so whoops, my bad. It appears to run some updates to change some stuff in the background, which is pretty cool, I guess. After some time had gone by, this application installer came up, and oh my god, it is so hard to read anything. There is a lot of crap that this comes with, so what better way to do this video than to just install all of it? Well, this took its sweet old time, so I went ahead and let it run for a while. But eventually, after waiting about half an hour again, we're finally at a desktop. Of course, there's no drivers or anything loaded, so the screen resolution is very low. I'm half expecting this thing to have viruses in it, so I don't know that I dare connect this to my Wi-Fi network for the meantime, and I highly doubt it has the driver anyway, so we'll go ahead and plug in a USB hard drive that I don't care about, so I can get some drivers on this thing, using good old Snappy Driver Installer, because I can't be bothered to go and get the actual drivers for this thing. This was working as normal, until a dialog came up, saying that Windows 9 will shut down in 2 minutes. Why? Nobody knows. It must have had some last-minute setup or something, I don't really know, I didn't trigger it. But of course Snappy Driver Installer couldn't complete in 2 minutes, so guess what I have to run again. It turns out, by the way, that it did actually update the boot logo text. It now says Windows 9 Edition on the boot screen. Perfect. One more reboot later, and here we are at the Windows 9 Edition desktop. Now you might call me a bit paranoid, but I decided to go ahead and install an old version of Malwarebytes that I knew would work, since, as you can see, it picked up a Trojan on it. Good. Amazingly, it only had one single virus on it, otherwise it didn't detect anything, so I guess I didn't have anything to worry about at all. Now as for the operating system itself, it comes with a Windows 10-like theme pre-applied. They've customized the right-click menu, so there's lots of different customization options, except most of them are almost entirely redundant. There's also a freeware syslink, which just does nothing, and there's an administrative tools thing on the desktop, and it also appears to have Dream Scene. It comes with lots of themes out of the box, including the Windows 9 theme, a Star Trek theme, a StarCraft theme, which looks kinda cool actually, a theme called Tanzo 7, Win 7 Squared Blend, Wood, which has got an Apple logo for some reason, X. Oh good lord, that background is great. X2 Crystal, and a Zune theme, apparently. So I mean, kinda cool, I guess, but personally, I just stick with the squared blend one. Now, as far as all of the crap it comes with, it has Adobe Reader 11 on it. a program called Glary Utilities 4 that I've never heard of in my life. It must be some kind of like maintenance tool, I guess, and apparently it's licensed to whatever this is. It also has TeamViewer 8. It has AMP3 on it. Auto Run Remover? What the hell is this? Apparently it's a virus scanner that I've never heard of, and who knows how legit it is. I ran a scan on it. Apparently it thinks the system's clean. Okay. CCleaner, which is just CCleaner. CPU-Z, which is a bit interesting. FileZilla FTP client. GOM player. An ancient version of Java, specifically Java version 7 update 45 from 2013. Guess this is now one of the 3 billion devices that runs Java. K-Lite codec pack with Media Player Classic. Malwarebytes, which I installed, it didn't come with it at all. Notepad++. Skype. Ultra ISO, which is not registered. It's just the trial version. VLC Media Player. And WinRAR. So yeah, not a lot of overly bad things, it just comes with a lot of stuff built in. On the desktop it also has a README document, as well as a FreewareSys Note Read, which are exactly the same thing. So not really sure why this is here twice. As for where that Trojan was located, it's actually a program called Metro Sidebar, which is for some reason in the users folder. I don't know that I dare try and run it since it did find viruses, but from what I can gather, it just appears to be a Windows 8 inspired sidebar anyway, so not really sure it's that interesting. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna connect this thing to my network. I wanted to see how this thing would react to Windows updates. At least that's what I thought. It turns out pressing enter on this keyboard now types VX. This thing is literally falling apart in real time. Anyways, I wanted to try Legacy Update on this just to run some Windows updates. Commonly, modded versions of Windows 7 tend to break as soon as you try and update them, so I was kinda curious. This theme appears to have changed the progress bar color to blue, which honestly, I actually kinda dig it. Otherwise, updates seem to work at first. The first load of updates installed just fine. Because this is based on Windows 7 Ultimate, it has all the language packs and stuff. I don't want to fill this thing's hard drive with language packs, so I didn't install all of that. By the way, here's a good look at the log on and off screen. It appears to basically be the Windows 8 style screen, except they've put a copyright FreewareSys thing at the bottom. It's not even centered, for the love of God! It also doesn't have like a progress bar or a cursor thing that makes it seem like it's still running, so for all you know, it could be crashed right now. You can't actually tell if it's doing anything unless the percent thing moves up. Seems like kind of not a great decision. Already, updates were already breaking things, since after it rebooted, it already reverted the text back to starting Windows, so no more Windows 9 edition. As far as other changes they've made, they've appeared to update some of the icons in the OS down by the taskbar to make them seem like Windows 8. They've also updated the start menu icon, and they've also set the taskbar to small icons that never combine by default, which is a bit of an interesting choice. They've also updated some system icons, but not all of them. So if you go in the control panel, some of the icons like home group and recovery and programs have been updated, but not others. We can take a look at the system settings. They've also custom added their own Windows logo and manufacturer logo, and apparently the model is Windows 9. Might as well take a look at the Windows Experience Index, though this isn't really that relevant to Windows 9, and more so just this computer kind of being crap. So yeah, there's Windows 9. It's a thing. It's quite the thing. I don't know that I would personally recommend this, but if you want some good laughs, it's there. Something else to note, by the way, is that while updates didn't at first break things, the more updates I installed, the more things started changing back to Windows 7 aspects. Obviously, the first immediate change was the text on the boot screen, but eventually I got to a point where the logon screen was reverted back to the Windows 7 one. Though it retains the same text, so it still looks ridiculous. It also put the system logo in, which makes this thing look even funnier because now it's got this Windows 9 logo on the logon screen. It also eventually reverted the start menu icon back to the Windows 7 one, which is kind of funny. And by the way, there's one final point I want to make about this OS and its usability, somewhat to do with updates, but somewhat just to do with how the OS is. It's very unstable. As you can see here, Windows Explorer almost constantly always crashes or just hangs on this computer. I'd say it takes maybe a good 5 minutes before it's actually usable because Explorer just crashes all the time. Windows 7 normally gets bloated down the more updates you install, but I mean, this is just plain ridiculous how unstable this is, to be honest. Before I finish, by the way, there's one final change that I wanted to point out. Not that it's that big of a deal, but it was something I noticed after I filmed most of this video. It turns out they've added more options when you right-click on computer. For example, Device Manager and Device Manager. I cannot find a reason why they would have done this. This literally does the exact same thing. Why? The other interesting thing to note is that there's also God mode. I have never seen this before on Windows, but it's basically every setting, every adjustment that you can make on your computer just laid out into one page. And you know what? I kind of like that it's here. Otherwise, that is Windows 9 Edition. Like I said, quite the thing. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check this out and haven't already. I would not recommend using this as your daily OS if it wasn't already clear. For all I know, there still could be other kinds of viruses on this that Malwarebytes didn't pick up because it's such an old version. So just don't do it. It's not worth it. Not that I'm sure anybody would have anyway, but, you know, just to cover my bases, I guess.